that it was impossible to study African history without studying Europe, racism, and colonialism, and a good dollop of white supremacy too. I did go on to write my PhD thesis on the construction of racial categories, but that was much later. I find it remarkable that an academic racialized as white, studying, let's say, English folklore, would never be automatically assumed to have an interest in racism. White people have not been overdetermined by their race, which is precisely why we have often witnessed scenes of obscene outrage in those moments when whiteness is pointed out and remarked upon. Recall the backlash, not to mention the complaints to Ofcom, when the Channel 4 newsreader Jon Snow remarked that he'd never seen so many white people in one place, while describing a pro-Brexit rally. That outrage hasn't gone away either, and the kickback against the Black Lives Matter protests has asserted itself in numerous ways, most pointedly in the British government's threat to ban the teaching of what they term critical race studies. But my reluctance to offer allyship advice was about more than all that. Honestly, the word ally itself jarred with me. I still don't like it. The power dynamic it reproduces makes me feel icky, and I've seen way too many guides talking about the ally and the victim. In short, I find a lot of the discourse patronizing, both on a personal level and with regard to the prospective ally. It is not a world-making practice. Indeed, I see a historic opportunity to reconfigure attitudes and reignite imaginations, being squandered by an anti-racist narrative that inadvertently reinforces much of what it claims to want to overcome, and that in many ways alienates people who might otherwise be persuaded. One of the things that allyship fails to address is the fact that you can continue to view Black people as inferior while still being committed to their protection. When I remembered that many of the 19th century anti-slavery abolitionists were themselves racists who held deep-seated beliefs about Black inferiority, I felt even more uncomfortable with the whole ally movement. Where the abolitionists differed most from the racist slaveholders was in their response to how racial inferiors should be treated. On the belief in inferiority itself, they were often in agreement. In certain ways, today's anti-racists are the abolitionists of the 21st century. A commitment to allyship with Black people doesn't automatically mean you don't think Black people are somehow inferior. It means you don't think they should be treated discriminatorily as a result. Moreover, the idea that anti-racism is an act of grace that benefits the poor Black victim obscures the psychological investment in, as well as the costs of, whiteness, the losses that are imbibed from its poisoned chalice, for white people too. Capitalism, patriarchy, and white supremacy have seduced and press-ganged people into servitude. Naming whiteness is necessary. It is the invisibility of white people who are presented just as people, the default norm from which everyone else deviates, that is part of its normative power-making. Yet the more you state and claim your whiteness, without doing any further work to unpack what that means, the more you become fixed to that articulation of self, the more you become wedded to whiteness. Some of the most racist societies have been ones with pronounced white identities that coexist via racialized others. Unfortunately, much of the present anti-racist conversation is ahistorical and lacking in this analysis. It is also generally devoid of analysis of class or capitalism, which it seems to have largely replaced with interpretations of interpersonal privilege. As such, I have very intentionally engaged with texts from earlier generations of intellectuals and activists whose work comes from a different set of priorities, aims that seem both clearer and more collective. The 1971 Rap on Race is a public